I'll just give a brief about Mr. Sayem Razzak, who is on the screen. Mr. Sayem Razzak is the director and principal consultant of Network Infinity, who helped many of my and many other individual business owners who came from different countries, not only Bangladesh, India, they came from many countries. So Mr. Sayem Razzak will talk about in detail actually. So first thing I want you to please introduce and talk about the Network Infinity and your portfolio. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Alom, for giving me the opportunity. Hi, all. My name is Sayem Razzak. I'm the director and principal of Network Infinity Business Consultants. So we operate as a franchise network in Australia. So we are one of the largest business broker firm in Australia. We have operations in 3 states at the moment, biggest being in Sydney, New South Wales, then Melbourne, Victoria, and also in Queensland. And we currently have over 300 business listed for sale in our organizations. And we have about 27 business brokers that operate in 3 states. I myself been in the business and startup arena more than 15 years. I worked at the National Australia Bank before, and I started this venture as a business broker in end of 2016. Since then, it has grown remarkably, and I have helped many of the 188 clients as well. So our business broking firm actually understands the needs of business migrants, and we have a business relationship with 188 migrants from South Africa, UK, India, Bangladesh, China, Indonesia, Malaysia, Iran. We see a lot of people coming from Iran as well, Pakistan, United Arab Emirates, and many other countries. We help the clients. So it depends on the client's needs, but we try to cater for all their needs. We don't always get what they need, but we try to find the best match for them.
Thank you, Mr. Sayem Razzak. It was interesting to know that you helping even people coming from UK. If you can talk a little bit about the situation. I know you will not mention the name or detail about the client, but if you can talk, why UK business owners coming to Australia? That's quite interesting.
I think a lot of people like the weather in Australia from UK. So you probably know UK not always have the sunny climate as Australia. So many UK people try to migrate to Australia. As you know, it's one of the biggest migrant group in Australia are actually from UK. And the reason being is that I think they like the lifestyle, and also people can afford property and everything, which is I think a bit cheaper than UK. And lifestyle they can achieve with much cheaper than UK. They can have a bigger house with backyard and things like that. So the particular client that I dealt with, he was a businessman in UK. He used to have supermarkets in UK, and he actually moved because of the lifestyle. He liked the beaches. He liked the outdoor activities in Australia. He liked the milder climate here in Australia. That's why he wanted to move to Australia. And when he moved to Australia, he went to different states to find out which one was the best match for him. And then he ended up buying a business near Geelong. So one of his son was going to go to university very soon as well. So he ended up buying a business in Geelong.
Okay, thank you. I just want to share my experience with UK. Many of audience or many of us don't know that uh, in recent years, last 10 years, if you go to Australian Bureau of Statistics, you will see that last 10 years, more than 40% immigrants who came out of Australia was born in UK, 40% roughly. Some
Yes, yes.
years between 30 to 37, 40%. So UK citizens, British citizens are the highest number migrating to Australia, uh, following by China and then India and then total European Union. And this is also interesting that the number of UK illegal citizens, the number of unlawful citizens or illegal citizens in Australia are from UK as well. Because when they come to Australia, they think, okay, they don't have to probably do anything at the moment, like just continue to stay. But for all of your information, like even a British citizen who come to Australia, he needs if he wants to stay as a British citizen, that's okay. But if he wants to get PR of Australia for the benefits of Australia things, he needs to apply one of these either business or either skill or either employment stream. He cannot just stay and get the facilities as other PR. So this is interesting. And I was really surprised, when I knew that most of the UK people they come, let they say port of entry for 6 months and they go beyond 6 months and they forget to do something. That was interesting when I learned about it. Yeah. So I'm getting some questions. I'm just noting them, but because we start Mr. Sayem Razzak, so we'll continue with him. And now I want to ask you a question, very interesting. The
Yeah.
the buying process. When someone come to Australia, this is a new country, new culture, new system. If you can please explain the buying process of a business, for a new business owner who come to Australia first time. Thank you.
Okay. So buying process, it involves several steps when someone decides on a business. So first of all, I think all the new migrants that are coming to Australia, they might have a specific skill. They might be running the same business overseas. And it's their intention sometimes is to run the same sort of business because they have the skills. But it's not always possible to get those sort of businesses. So I think the first thing before I discuss the process of buying a business is actually selecting the right business, the business that will actually bring profit or actually fulfill the migration criteria, or both profit and everyone wants to make profit in a business. So I think a lot of the 188 clients that I actually deal with it. I find there, as a new migrant, they will obviously be confused as well when they first come. They look at hundreds of businesses, they talk to hundreds of different types of people, and that time it becomes a bit difficult for them to make a decision. So I think the first step anyone would be taking was obviously talking to their accountant or talking to their migration agent, or talk to us, or business brokers, to find out the exact type of business they want. So once someone has selected the business they want, the business buying process is pretty much simple. Every business, once you select a business, you start the negotiation with the vendor, and the business brokers are there to help you. Business broker, you can talk to them, understand what the vendor is looking for, what sort of terms and conditions it's going to be. So all those sort of things come into effect once you talk to a business brokers, and business broker actually relay that message to the vendor. So let's say you are buying just to give you an example, say you were buying a cafe. So if you want to buy a cafe, the cafe was advertised at 400,000. So you have to understand why they were asking 400,000. So once you negotiate the price, maybe say at 380,000, and the vendor is happy to do that as well, then you actually put a heads of agreement. So the broker will prepare a heads of agreement, and in that heads of agreement, you not only put the price, but you also put the terms and condition that the business will be selling it. So once you sign the heads of agreement, sometimes heads of agreement can be binding. So it's very appropriate or advisable for buyers to actually contact a lawyer and get an understanding about the terms and condition. So binding means once you sign that, pay deposit, you have to fulfill the terms and conditions of the contract, and you will be required to buy the business. So you cannot probably get out of the contract if you change your mind. If you get out, then you will lose your deposit. So let's start the business buying process. So once you provided that you agreed on terms and condition and everything, you sign the heads of agreement and you pay a deposit. So deposit can vary, usually it's a 10% deposit. So a business is $380,000 for the example I said, that cafe. So you will be required to pay $38,000. So that will actually give a good signal to the vendor that you are a serious buyer. If you put anything less than that, some vendor might not agree, although we have seen in some instances where there were only 5% of the total deposit of the price was paid. So, but most of the time it's like 10%. So you pay 10% deposit, then you obviously have a lawyer, and you need a lawyer to actually do other things as well. So when you buy a business, it's usually you are just buying the business, not the freehold. Freehold meaning the premise that the business runs it. It's owned by someone else, like landlord. So in that heads of agreement, you will put the price, you put a deposit, then it will be subject to training, subject to lease transfer. If the premise has a liquor license, it will be subject to liquor license transfer. If it's a franchise, it will be subject to franchisor approval. So these are very basic things. So other things you might ask for is a trial. A trial meaning is that you want to also figure out the sales figure. So if a cafe is claiming they're doing 20,000 a week on average, so you can definitely agree on a trial, like I want 20,000. Usually they agree on 20,000 plus minus 10%. Sometimes the sale goes up and down. So the vendor would want to make sure that if there was some shocks or external events, that actually can have some impact on the sales, they will not agree on 20,000 to the dot. They will probably agree on a range. So that's one of the important things that you can ask for. So once those sort of things are done, you will have to prepare the vendor's solicitor will prepare a contract of sale. So contract of sale stage is very important, and you will need a qualified solicitor or a lawyer. They are qualified in business sales. And in that contract of sale, it will have everything. It will have most of the things covered. So once you agree, it will actually be a reflection of the heads of agreement. So heads of agreement will have most of the terms and conditions. But in the contract of sale is much more detailed. It's about, I think, 30, 40 page. And most of the lawyers, they use a form that was designed by Law Institute of Victoria, so which is a very rock solid contract of sale. So some of the things, a lot of 188 ask me, oh, Sam, what happens with his liabilities? What happens with staff? What happens with all those things, even before they start negotiating about the business. So it's very important that you consult the things people have concern with, like what's going to happen to his liabilities. So these are the things that are covered in contract of sale. So usually, if you have a good lawyer, they will advise you to buy a business asset of the business, not the liabilities of the business. So what I mean by is that a business will have assets and liabilities. So when you buy a business, you are buying the assets of the business, not the liability. So you have to form a new company to buy the assets of that company, and you are not buying the company. So that way you are very covered. So once you sign the contract of sale, you will be required to pay the full 10% deposit. Sometimes with the heads of agreement, you start with say 5% deposit or even $5,000. But once you sign a contract of sale, you are required to pay the full 10% deposit. So once you pay the 10% deposit, that's when the contracts, usually you will be required to sign the contract of sale. So you will go to your lawyer's office, or they will probably just send you a digital copy. You sign it, you send it back, and the vendor signs it. So first the buyer signs the contract, and then the seller signs. So at this stage, we say the contract has been exchanged. So once it is exchanged, it becomes a binding agreement. So as a buyer, you can't back out, or as a seller, they can't back out. So as a buyer, if you back out or change your mind after that point, you will lose your deposit, and there could be further ramification as well. The vendor might sue you, try to recover the money as well. So once you sign the contract of sale, that's the next stage starts. Usually it's the lease transfer. So lease transfer is usually done by the buyer's lawyer. They will create a document called lease transfer, and if there is any variation, they will do that as well. Sometimes you buy a business, particularly in shopping centers, there might be only 1 year lease left or 2 year lease left. So you probably want to get a 5-year lease. So you have to talk to the shopping center, like, hey, I want to have the business for 5 years. I just don't want 1 year lease. So those sort of terms and conditions will be discussed prior to contract of sale being signed. So if there is some clause like that, then the lease will be variation. In other times, what happens is that if a business only has 10 years lease, there is sufficient time for you to actually buy the business, complete your turnover requirement, and actually get the PR. But some people want extra years as well, like another 5 years or 10 years. So you will ask your lawyer to actually put those extra 5 years or 10 years into the lease. And most of the times, if the landlord doesn't have any plan of demolishing the place, or doing something else with the place, they will agree. But 10 years is a long time to have a lease. So it's called transfer of lease. If you need a variation, it will call transfer and variation of the lease. And sometimes you will just have a new lease. You can negotiate with the shopping center or a landlord just to have a new lease. So it becomes, it depends on what you want and whether the vendor agrees as such. Usually it's just a lease transfer. You will get the exact same terms when you take over the business. So the landlord cannot increase the rent and things like that, or give you a new lease unless you want. It will just follow the terms and conditions of the old lease. So most businesses we buy, you are usually buying as a going concern. So let's just say a business is $400,000 and you are not buying as a going concern, then there will be GST added. So in that case, most people buy this with as a going concern. So there is no GST. So 400, you buy it as 400. So once the lease is transferred, legal license, you will also apply to the legal license department. If it is a food business or restaurant cafe, you will actually, it's called a VCGLR, Victorian Liquor and Gambling. So you apply to them. Before that, you will have to do a legal license course. Obviously, there are licensing course. You can do it online, or you can go into, I think now it's not that much restriction of COVID. You can basically just go to, institute, they train people for those sort of courses. And it's probably cost $300-400, and in one day it will be done. And once you get the certification, you fill out the application form and you apply for the legal license transfer. Then obviously, depending on your terms and conditions, if there is a term for trial, once the legal license is approved and also the lease is approved. So it's pretty much the contract is becoming unconditional. So the only condition is training. But if there is a franchisor approval, if there is a franchisor approval, obviously you will have to attend an interview with the franchisor. Some franchisor requires you to have some experience in the relevant industry. Like if you are trying to buy a petrol station, let's just say United. We recently had a client who was refused by United because he didn't have any Australian experience. So not all franchises will be willing to approve you, depending on your English and experience. So if you're buying a retail business, if you have done any retail business in the past in your country or even in Australia, it's good to highlight that you have to prepare a resume or CV, and you have to put those sort of things in there. So a franchisor might approve you. They usually have 14 to 28 days. They usually approve you within that time frame. So lease transfer, liquor license transfer, franchise approval, all those sort of things can happen at the same time. So once those three are approved, then it is pretty much an unconditional contract, and you do the last thing as a trial. If the vendor allows you to do a trial, because of COVID, a lot of the vendors are reluctant to provide any trial, because if there are cases, COVID cases, sometimes they have to shut down business and things like that. So they usually don't allow to provide, because of that risk element, any trial. But you can have training. Sometimes the franchisor provides you training. Some franchise can train you for like six weeks. So 6 weeks will be a long time. You might have to travel interstate as well, like coffee club. If you're buying a coffee club, you will be training in Queensland for six weeks, and you have to pay for your living expenses as well. But there are other franchises who require very minimal training. They have in Victoria as well, so you don't have to travel overseas. Interstate. So once you've done the training, then the franchisor will approve you, and then you can go for trial if you want a trial. Let's just say 20,000. So 20,000 sales per week on average. So you get trial for 2 weeks. Sometimes 1 week is enough. So 2 weeks trial, you do the trial, and if the figures are all correct, then you do settlement. Settlement is the last step. So in that settlement, your lawyer has a lot of work to do. The lawyer will basically make sure that all the bills that has been paid by the vendor, in advance, all those things are adjusted. So it's called statement of adjustment. So you'll get all the figures, exactly how much. So if you're buying a business for $380,000, not necessarily it will be the end figure. So you have to have some money for the bills they have paid. For example, they probably have paid council rates. So every business, so when you buy a business, you have to pay basically all the things, the insurance, the rates, and you sometimes you have to pay the bills that are paid in advance. Some people pay electricity in advance. They have some agreement with the energy company. If they pay in advance, they pay less. So those sort of things are adjusted, at this stage. So your lawyer will be doing all those, and you will be given a figure. Let's just say another $5,000. Then there is another thing called stock. So you have to look for the stock. When you buy a business, you have to also, like if it's a cafe restaurant, you usually don't have much stock. It's probably 10,000-15,000. But let's just say you are buying a supermarket. So when you buy a supermarket, the stock can be anywhere from 200,000 to 300,000 to even $500,000. So for those level of stock, you have to nominate a stock taker. So stock taker is someone who's very qualified. They do this all the time. And you'll nominate someone, your lawyer and the vendor's lawyer will agree on the stock taker's responsibility, and they do a very good job. They come, and if they find anything is not expiring within 2 months or 3 months, they value it differently than something expiring in 12 months. If anything is not good, they will just throw it out. So if it is say $300,000 stock, they will go through all of those, and they will give you an exact figure how much you have to pay. But the stock taker charge is about 1% of the total stock value. That is 300,000. They will probably charge you $3,000 for the whole thing. And the good thing is you don't have to pay all. The vendor pays half, you pay half, which is $1,500. It's just an example I'm giving you. So once the stock take is done, then the settlement usually happens in the morning when the banks are open, and you will be required to prepare a bank check. Your lawyer will tell you exactly how much you have to make. It's called the checks directions. So the lawyer will tell you who to pay how much, and the vendor will let you know who are the people that you have to pay. So make sure you get your lawyer involved. And sometimes in the sale process, you will have a lot of questions, a lot of issues. That's where the business brokers are. If you have any issue, business broker is the go-to between. It's the middle person. So if you have any grievance, you can talk to the business broker. If you have any issues or anything, you need something done, you can always contact the business broker. But your lawyers will be the main person because they are representing it. But business brokers get involved when there is an issue with a few things. If you have some issue that you can't pay on time, you need to get the date changed. So you just have a normal chat with the business broker, and business broker can help you out in that scenario. So once the settlement happens, you provide the checks, and then you get the keys, and from that onward, the business is yours. But sometimes you will have clauses where the vendor is required to stay back for another XYZ time frame. So sometimes the vendor are required to stay back to assist you. So that can happen as well. But from the settlement date, the business is yours. All the liabilities, everything is yours. So this is in probably I went much more detail than what many of you were expecting, but I think these are the steps. So I will just to summarize. You sign the heads of agreement once you agree on the price. And in the heads of agreements, you will put the terms and conditions, lease transfer, license transfer, franchise, franchisor approval. So these are the main things usually. And then you sign the contract of sale. So in the contract of sale, it becomes binding. You have to pay a 10% deposit, which is non-refundable. And after you sign the contract of sale, it's usually there is no way to get out of the purchase. But you can get out if you have circumstances beyond your control. But in that case, you will probably lose your deposit. And then obviously, once all those approvals are done, lease transfer, franchise, franchisor approval, if there is a franchise, legal license, you start the training or trial. And if the trial passes and the training is satisfactory, then you do the settlement. And the whole process normally takes about 30 to 90 days. One thing I probably didn't mention is subject to finance. So in the past, we had some 188 business migrants who were able to get the finance approved. But I'll leave it to Mr. Shamsul to discuss if you have any questions regarding finance, how they're approving at this stage. But this is in detail how the business sale process is.
Step by step, your explanation about the procedure, buying a business and settling the business. Meantime, we have a few questions which I'm just trying to note down. So I have noted all these questions, and I will ask the relevant presenter. The questions will not miss any of them. All I want to ask all of the audience, if you can please type, because seems like you all are listening. If you can please type which country of origin you are from, because I can see there's many audience at the moment listening the webinar. So please type your country of origin or where you from in the chat box, so we just get some idea. We can see someone from India and someone from Pakistan, from Iran. So I believe it's very time different in different countries. You know, we are in Australia at the moment. It's 11 o'clock. We have passed 1 hour of our presentation, but it must be very different in different countries. Sarwa Jahan, Australia. And if you all can please type which country you are joining from, so we just get some idea of people. Pradeep Paul, Bangladesh. Yes. Anyone else? Please type your name of the country of origin. I just want to give a little bit heads up about this. What I have understood from Sayem Razzak's presentation is when a business owner comes on 188 visa, you go and register a company in a proper structure, and that is done by a certified professional accountant or a corporate lawyer. And then once the company is formed, the structure is there, then you look for a business to buy. Or you can start a new business, like, you know, something from the very beginning. But you have to be very careful that whether you have sufficient turnover when you start something very new. You have to meet the requirements. So some people may go and buy a business, some people may start their own idea and own business, or something they're doing in overseas, they want to extend or expand it here in Australia. So if you want to buy a business, it can be like, for example, anything. And I will ask Mr. Sayem Razzak actually just to name some of the businesses. And if you start from the beginning, like your own idea, like someone said, I want to do IT business of my own, that's also okay. There's no problem. Everything is possible. And some people may do export, you know, because sometimes local business, doing a local business, dealing with a franchisee, dealing all the legal requirements is very, very stressful, you know. And many of the business immigrants, they think, oh, say, I want to straight away export Australian product to overseas. Or someone may say, okay, I want to buy a cafe, simple, you know. Or someone may say, okay, my neck is, you know, I want to get all the garments, you know, fashion wear from overseas, and I want to sell it here. But they have to have a good luck, you know, with that, you know, whether they can sell it or not properly. So there are many situations, you know. And what I want to say that the immigration journey is not by only migration lawyer or agent. It's a combination, it's a teamwork. That's why I invited all everyone to share their experience. Why? Because when you come, see, we process your migration visa from your country to Australia. You come here, we need to introduce you with the right certified professional accountant who will do all your incorporation, like, you know, company registration stuff. Then we need a business broker, like, who wants to help you to find the right business and buying the process. You know, the process, there's a lot of work needs to be done within this process. And then once you buy the process, you need to have some sort of assistance in managing the business, even if it is export, if it is local business, anything, because the work culture is very different from where are you from, and it is Australia is very different. The way dealing with the staff, the way dealing with the, you know, contractors, suppliers, everything is quite different, you know. So you need some support on this one. And then every 3 months you need to go back to your accountant, give your bank statements, and actually accountant can see your bank statements, and they prepare the lodgement that Mr. Chanchal Kumar will explain. They every 3 months they need to submit to the Australian Tax Office the best statement, business activity statement, and we need to update your 3 months business management activity documentation. So when you run these 3 months, we prepare your documentation, we get them ready, accountant submit it to the tax office. Like this, you continue 8 quarters. And after 8 quarters, you are ready to submit the application. Someone, if they do not do it every 3 months, after 8 quarters, which is 2 years, they have to go back to their files and prepare everything, which is in Australia very stressful and hard. Sometimes it's not possible even. When you pass the time and then you go back to find the documents of 2 years before what you have done is very hard. So what we have done is we have a resource, professional resource. Everyone is here to help from their own perspective, so that when you come to Australia, you get everyone, so they're happy to help, and you just need to understand. If you have any question, ask, and hopefully the 2 years journey should not be hard. But I have listened, there are many business owners who came to Australia and their face is very difficult because there was no arrangement of all these services in one stop, all together. They had to go here for something, the other place for some other things, and finally sometimes they failed to achieve their requirements. That's why what I have done in Bridging US, we have a combination of all the services individually provided by the professionals, and they are registered, and they are here to help, so that you do not miss your timeline, you do not miss to apply to your PR. And we if it is like export, if it is local business, if it is something new IT, or like you want to import, and there are some logistics supports. For example, sometimes like last week I helped someone to rent a warehouse because they importing some building materials from China, and they have all the sales channel that they're selling. So anything you need in Australia, we are here to help. We have the right people to help. There's no problem. All you need is to ask. So I got a question for Mr. Sayem Razzak from one of the audience. The question was, instead of buying an old company or old business, can they start fresh with a brand new company? And I'm not sure whether they mean by register a new company for the obligation for liability purpose, or the question was basically start something new, fresh product. So can you please cover both aspects, like liability part? I think you covered in your presentation. So the question was, can I register a brand new company?
Absolutely, you can. So you have to look at, first you have to understand. I mean, you can operate the company, register it for GST, all those things your accountant will take care of. Then you can start. It depends on what you want to do. I find from Iran, I had a client. He had a friend. He was selling orthopedic, shoes. I think it's like Homiped. So he wanted to start that. And absolutely you can do it as long as the turnover is there. So one of the thing is that when you start something, you might have a great idea. You have to do your research. You have to understand whether you will be successful, it's called the SWOT analysis. Like, you gotta have a business plan. The business plan is one of the, like, your accountant should be able to plan, because if the accountant is living in Australia for a long time, they will understand the market. You can do some of your as well. So you do the strength, weakness, opportunities and threats. This is very important part, as well as doing the cash flow projections. So you can start a new business, but you have to understand whether you can sustain it. Like, are you going to provide a service, or are you going to provide a product, or mixture of both? So you have to do your market research and make sure that you can get the $300,000 turnover. Plus, there is a requirement for you to have 2 employees, full-time employees, or if you want to bypass that, you probably have to do $600,000 asset, you have to have $600,000 of assets in Australia. I think Mr. Alom, you can explain that better. But absolutely, people can start a new business if they can get the time.
Two other questions. I think some of the questions are more relevant to my side of expertise. I got a question. It says someone applied for 888 visa. Like, for example, someone came to Australia, they start doing a business, something local business, they have staff, and they started running the business, and they, for example, have staff salary to pay, and they're doing everything all right. But what happened during the COVID, their sale dropped, so they have less income, but they have to continue their staff because they're meeting the staff requirements. So if they meet the staff requirements and if they pay the staff, then the business is going into loss, and business will make, for example, lose the asset. There will be less asset, will drop down significantly from the business. And the question was, if we continue paying staff and the business asset drop below 200,000 Australian dollar, then what will happen? Will they get a COVID concession for this, or whether it will be acceptable? See, when you're running a business, for example, a departmental store or a cafe or restaurant, something that require a showroom, require some staff, and you have to pay the staff regardless of your income. So when you pay the staff and your expense is high, that means you are in a loss position. And when you are in a loss position, your business liability is increasing, and that's why the net equity into the business is dropping. So you do not meet the 200,000 Australian dollar business asset investment and maintenance requirement. Like, you started with, let's say, $220,000 business asset, but now at the moment is 180,000 Australian dollar. The answer is, well, it's very tricky question. It's a difficult question and difficult situation. The answer will be, there are two options. One is you can raise your business asset by investing more. So you can invest more, you can increase your share, you can report it to the AC through your accountant. So if your business asset is coming down, you can see it like it's dropping to, for example, 180. So you can invest another, let's say, 20 or 25,000 to keep it just above 200,000. So you are in a very safe position, number one. Number two option is, for example, your business asset was in the beginning of the year 200,000 or 220,000, but now is on the end of the year is like 180,000. So then, and you mentioned because of the staff, so you have the staff, so that's a good thing. If you remember, there are two options to fulfill. One is either total 600,000 Australian dollar investment or staff. Then you have to fulfill both of them. For example, someone started with 220,000 in business. They bought a house, another 600,000. So that means they have total $820,000 investment. Personal and business, $820,000 investment. And now they have staff as well. So they're paying the staff, and the business asset dropped below 200,000, is like 180,000. So you have three criteria. One is business asset must be $200,000 or more. Number two, your total personal and business asset needs to be $600,000 or more. Number three, you have to have 2 Australian full-time PR or citizen staff, eligible staff. So you meet 2 of them, 600 and 2 staff, so you can apply. So nothing stops you. You can apply, but it is critical. You need proper advice and you need proper presentation, like, representation of your information and the situation to the department, then how you meet the requirement. But my short answer will be yes, you still can apply if you meet the other requirements. The second question was, once you apply for 888 visa, once you apply 888 visa, then if you don't want to continue your business or don't want to continue your staff, what happens? Number one is you must continue your business. You cannot stop your business because this is not the requirement of numbers. It's like, do you have intention to settle in Australia? Do you have intention to run business in Australia? Do you have ongoing intention, to continue the business? So under that criteria, you must maintain the business. But if you ask, do I, for example, I run the business on second year, I have 3 full-time staff, I applied for PR. Now, do I need to maintain the staff? So, see, it needs to be again genuinity. The question of genuinity. If you had 2 full-time Australian staff for 1 year and then you apply and then you say, I don't need staff anymore. So that means like you intentionally hired the staff because you did not need them. It was not required by the business. It was just your intention that you want to fulfill the requirement. That's why you hired them and now you fired them. Like you don't have any staff. So that will be like, genuinity question. So I believe like if you have staff, you should have some form of staff continue based on your business. But if your business is like, for example, before your spouse could not give you time in the business, now she is coming to help you in the business. For example, before you had other commitments, first time settling in Australia, you could give less time into the business. Now you're giving more time. So before, for example, you had 3 staff, now you may have 1 staff or maybe 1 part-time. But you just can't do like, okay, I submit the application today and tomorrow I say call my staff and I'm saying no, I'm doing everything by myself. This is suspicious. So you just need to be reasonable and genuine in your business intention and performing the business.